All right, we are live here on YouTube. So let's see how this new time works out. If any of you guys are able to show up, there's a lot of stuff to talk about, but it is very late at night in a lot of places in the world. And so we'll see. We have one viewer so far. Anyways, we'll see how this time works out, but I have a lot of smart home news to discuss. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Hey, Carbonato, nice to see you here. Let me go ahead and pull up this. So one of the big pieces of news coming before IFA. So I guess to back up really quick, IFA is a sort of tech conference in Berlin, and it's used as a nice to see some more people here joining the chat. Dan, Waylon, and Brian, thanks so much for showing up. Got here just in time, Brian. Yes. Hey, Waylon. New time, and I was on time today. I didn't in the past with Fridays, I kind of have scooted in like 1 or 2 minutes late, but today I'm ready to go. But anyway, so IFA is a big trade show in Berlin, and it's used as a place where a lot of smart home tech companies have been making announcements, as well as things like appliances and other home-related tech like that, along with more general tech, I think, like laptops and monitors and stuff like that. So you might have seen some news coming if you follow tech news out of IFA in Berlin. It happens about this time every year. And when I was at CES, you talk to a lot of companies at CES, and they all ask you, or not all, but a lot of companies ask, "Oh, are you going to be at IFA, or are you coming to IFA?" And it's a long way for some of us in the U.S. to go out, but who knows? Maybe someday. Either way, interesting show with some news coming out from some of our favorite smart home tech brands. Late night stream, yes, Sam. Good to see you here. Oh, nice. Got to have some good beverages there, Sam, when you're tuning into smart home tech. With IFA, before we get into the IFA news and the Nanoleaf announcements today, I just want to mention Aqara joining the Works with Home Assistant program. So Home Assistant has a Works with Home Assistant program, kind of like Apple Home and Amazon and Google. All the companies have these systems, but the unique part is that it's a nonprofit group running Home Assistant, but they still have that program. And they added the motion sensor P2 and the door and window sensor P2 and the U200 lock. I also find it interesting that they say they've been testing the yet to be launched Smart Lock U300. I don't have a U300 yet, Aqara, or at least if I did, I couldn't comment on it. But where's mine? I thought it's interesting here at the bottom. They say Works with Home Assistant is run by a nonprofit, which means it's not a profit-making endeavor. Yeah, of course. It is about encouraging brands to go above and beyond in the home assistant community, and we're excited to have Aqara join. And then they when shopping for devices, we recommend first looking at our Works with Home Assistant partner products. These products always prioritize long-term support and local control. So good things to have, and I'm excited to see Home Assistant create a program like this because the marketing behind it and brands hopefully wanting this label on their box kind of encourages more brands, I think, to take Home Assistant seriously, which can be really nice because most of Home Assistant's time so far has been a lot of developers out in the wild just making integrations happen between these different brands via APIs. So really great to see things moving forward there. Another thing, this is a translation of a German website here, but Eve Thermo is another Eve product to add Matter. I think we talked about in the last live stream. It was a couple weeks ago now, but Eve also announced their new outdoor outlet for the Eve Energy line, and that now also supports Matter. So more products from Eve with Matter. They're not standing still. And also, I think we had some questions last time in the stream about energy efficiency. And the Eve Energy line is a really good place to look for that, just because anything that has the Eve Energy sort of brand around it is focused on that concept of you can open the Eve app and see the history of the power consumption and things. And of course, some of their products don't have quite as much elaborate stuff in that department after their move to from HomeKit over to Matter. For example, with the HomeKit ones for the Eve Energy smart plugs, you used to be able to automate things based on energy power consumption. And I don't think, if I remember correctly, you can do that with the Matter ones. But just keep that in mind if you're looking for things to monitor your energy or you're concerned about energy usage with smart home products. Eve Energy is a good line to look at. And in talking to them back at CES, they seem really interested in continuing to build out that Eve Energy line. I mean, of course, you saw the Eve Energy outlet and now the outdoor outlet. So, I don't think that's, I think that's going to continue probably. I don't know beyond what they've already released anything coming, but I just think they're committed to that. Hello from Vegas, James. Nice to see you here. Edgar's Home Tech. Oh, don't worry. Just saw my IG story. Thanks, Edgar. Nice to see you here. It's a second live stream today. I've seen Edgar. He and I were both at the Nanoleaf announcement earlier today. So that was exciting. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Hello from Australia, Robert. That is very cool. Thanks for tuning in from so far away. Started making my garage smart with the Eve Energy plug. Turns off my charging station when it recognizes a lower wattage. Oh, that's really cool. Nice. I like that setup. Hey, completed my smart home. All lights are smart doors, wall mounted. Wow. Very cool. Water bottle 365. That sounds great. Yes. Oh, and the Eve Energy, thank you, Brian, for adding this, now works with Home Assistant and it reads the power and energy levels. That's cool. So then you could probably do some automations there if you weren't able to potentially do that in Apple Home. So that's really great to see that coming to Home Assistant. Speaking of Home Assistant integrations, now going back to the news, we'll cover some of the news and then get back to some more questions from you guys. We have Aqara had some big stuff coming out of IFA today, and it, some of it I think applies and is more interesting to us Apple Home users than others. So of course they have the Aqara G5 Pro is their new outdoor camera. And so it's kind of a pre-announcement. It will support HomeKit Secure Video. And I just think that it's really nice to see some company finally making another option for an outdoor HomeKit Secure Video camera. How many times, if you've regularly tuned into these live streams, do you see someone come, what's your best pick for outdoor HomeKit Secure Video camera? And because a lot of people who have an Apple Home, they want that. And the Eve Outdoor Cam has really been the best option so far. There's some old Eufy cameras that you could probably still use, and maybe some people are still using. There's a handful of options. You can potentially, just put an indoor camera in your window and have it aim outside is another way to do it. But now we have yet another option coming with the G5 Pro from Aqara. So that's cool. And also the other cool feature that the G5 Pro brings is color night vision. So if you've seen on my channel, my review of the Railink dual lens camera, the G2H, I can't remember the model number, but my recent Railink camera review, I talked about the color night vision that they have with their Color X night vision from Railink. Really cool tech there. And so Aqara is apparently bringing a competitor to that, I guess you could say, in the G5 Pro. So that'll be really neat to see how that all stacks up. Really can't wait for that. They also announced something they kind of pre-announced as well at the CES show, which is a water shutoff valve. And this looks like a much more finished form of the product. So at CES, they were showing a version of it as a concept to kind of gauge interest. And I actually have a video of that right here. So you can kind of see what Aqara is going for with this valve. Maybe you don't understand how something like this would work. So we can go ahead and roll this video.
Can we move that?
Oh yeah, sorry. Just getting a tour with some other folks there.
Okay, ready?
So they spray the bottle and then on the leak sensor, and then the leak is detected and the sensor shuts off the water. So that, or the valve control shuts off the water with that. Just going over a very typical water shutoff valve here in North America, and I imagine some other parts of the world. So really neat to see that pairing with a leak sensor. You can, of course, do this with existing valve controls today, but it's nice to see Aqara doing it since they sell those leak sensors that so many people use, and I do as well. And so to have the integration right there in the same brand, same system that shuts off your water just feels like a great option. So that's really exciting. Then moving on to other Aqara things they announced, one that I want to show really quick is this like little voice assistant that you like pick up. And so you can pick it up and then talk to it. It's an interesting idea because I think a lot of people, as they were spinning it at CES, and this is a more sort of, as they get the product closer to release, they're talking more about it now at IFA. Because at CES, it was very much a concept that a lot of people are concerned with the privacy of. There's this speaker in my home that's always listening to me and is listening for the wake words. And if you understand some of the technology, you can realize that it's probably just looking for a profile of that particular word or words being said, and that's all done locally, and then it starts sending data to the cloud, but it could mishear you, and we've all had that happen, I'm sure, with HomePods and other speakers. So with a voice assistant like this, it's very clear to the user when it's listening because it only listens when you pick it up. Now, there could still, I think, be some false triggers there where you jiggle the table or something else that maybe gives it a false trigger. But I think it's a really interesting concept. I don't know in practical use every day how much it would actually be useful because a lot of the times I want to use a voice assistant, it's not when I want to do things super quickly. It's when, let's say, I'm doing the dishes or maybe something else with food in the kitchen. So my hands are doing something else and I don't want to touch anything that's not clean food or whatever, or I have dirty dish cleaning hands. And so then talking to the air, even if it's a little bit slower, is preferred for me compared to something that's that I can pick up. But I think it's an interesting idea. Man, Aqara does not slow down. They just continue to roll out all these products. It's amazing. I'm not complaining, but it just seems like just yesterday they released the FP1E, which is the millimeter wave sensor talked about on my channel. So to see them announce a bunch of this news at CES or at IFA was really exciting. And they also have a new switch as well that's not necessarily something for the North American market. And then they have some more light bulbs. And then they also they're getting into the garage door controller market. So that'll be interesting to see how that all works. Now, they were talking a little bit about the garage door controller concept at CES as well. The thing with the garage door controller market, I think, is that there's just so many different potential options they have to solve for of different types of garages. So it's a hard problem, I think, to solve. And we'll see how they're actually able to pull it off. I know Maris has had a successful product in that space for a long time, as well as Tailwind. And Tailwind has a lot of different scenarios as you set the garage door opener up. I haven't set up Maris's, but I'm wondering with Aqara how they're going to handle things like all the different MyQ and sort of modern smart openers. Are they just not going to integrate with those and it'll just be sort of an analog control, or is it going to be something more tailored to all kinds of different options? We will see. Let me hear some of you guys' conversation in the chat, and then we can go back to or move on to the Nanoleaf announcements as well. Oh, you said this would be a PoE camera. Yes, I remember, Edgar, you mentioned that. I didn't believe you because I didn't think that base looked like something that would be an outdoor camera, but you were right on. I don't know if it will actually be PoE versus just Wi-Fi. I haven't read all the details. Maybe someone in the chat has found out that information, but I haven't heard anything about it being. I'm just assuming that it's Wi-Fi, and will probably, based on the size of it, be connected to constant power, not necessarily something you would charge with a battery. Especially, Aqara hasn't really done much in terms of their own battery tech, and I think doing an outdoor camera would be a very bold move to do your own battery tech. Of course, IFA has done a lot of those kind of cameras, and with their relationship to their parent company or sibling company, Aqara, they've obviously made a lot of batteries through Aqara, so plenty of expertise there. And Arlo has been in the business for a while, although they don't have a background in batteries. So I'm not saying Aqara couldn't make a battery-powered camera. I'm just skeptical that this is actually a battery-powered camera. Some folks using Rail-Link with scripted. That's cool. Do you think Aqara will start updating all their products with Matter? I want the leak sensors, but I was waiting for them to be released with Matter. And then John chimed in with a very useful answer there, which is that it is correct. Their hubs are Matter enabled. So with a hub, you get something called a Matter bridge. And the Matter bridge then enables accessories that are connected to it that are otherwise not compatible with Matter, but fit the right device types for Matter, then can be seen inside of other Matter platforms like Apple Home. I prefer with Apple Home to add my Aqara devices through that integration rather than Matter. The disadvantage is that you don't get the security system if you add it through Matter, which could be nice. I have thought about maybe moving over to Matter for those Aqara products with Apple Home, but of course it does open up possibilities of using something like a Home Assistant with those devices that then are through the bridge. Now, I will say my M3 hub, I think Aqara is doing a lot of great work and they have a lot of great accessories out there. However, I've not had the best experience overall with my FP2 millimeter wave sensors, particularly in 2024, and then also my M3 hub. My M3 hub, I was kind of skeptical about the whole concept of the M3 hub at first, at least for people who use Aqara products like I do that tend to just use that as a bridge into other smart home platforms. So you set up your accessories with the Aqara hub. You're not doing a lot of automations in the Aqara app, and then you just bring it straight into something else. For that, I think the M3 is a little bit overkill, and I found the software just to be giving me some issues. So I went back to my M2 hub, and that's been working great. And would highly recommend if you're thinking about Aqara sensors or don't already have a hub, the M2 hub would be really nice. The interesting side of it too, with speaking of their hub, they announced that this new G5 Pro camera that they announced now at IFA is actually going to also be a hub. And Aqara doesn't really sell a lot of outdoor sensors right now. So in this super fast paced world that Aqara lives in and just coming out with all these products, maybe they'll come out with outdoor sensors or things too, which could be pretty interesting because, of course, you can have multiple of these bridges or hubs from Aqara in your home at the same time, pair different accessories with the one that makes the most sense, although the range for my home is not very large, and so the range for one hub bridge can cover everything, no problem. But the outdoor use case could be a little bit different, so we'll see how that works. Greetings from Virginia, Miguel. I actually grew up age 9 through leaving the home and going to school. I grew up in Richmond, Virginia. So great state. Do you think we finally get camera doorbell support with the next version of Matter? I don't know if with Matter 1.4, did that actually add cameras? Because I know Matter 1.3 is something we're probably going to get with the an upcoming version of iOS because of what the CSA posted on their website about Matter test devices. but that's where was that? I had that. But Matter 1.4. Anyways, I'm not familiar with it supporting cameras, but I know it's been in the works for a while. I think the one thing that I'm always skeptical on with the cameras coming into a system like, any smart home system, but via Matter, is a lot of these companies are very protective of their revenue of subscription camera systems that store recordings. So I bet with something like Matter, yes, there might be something like RTSP where maybe you could just take the stream of a Matter camera and record the video off of it to some other system. But I think the Matter standard probably won't support much in terms of recording or viewing clips, because they'll want you to go back to that particular manufacturer's app to view those recordings with their own system, where you pay them a regular fee potentially for storage, or are using local storage with their bridge or hub. I would guess that whatever we get with Matter for cameras, it'll be just live view. But I'm a little bit behind on finding out if that is true yet or not with 1.4. But we're just barely getting 1.2 and 3 for Apple iOS. And so Matter 1.4, I don't know, maybe sometime mid next year. We got some time, probably. Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's funny these days. YouTube gives you, as a creator, stats on how many subscribers or how many viewers you have that are subscribed versus not subscribed. And there are lots of people who are viewing and not subscribing to a lot of channels, including my own. And it's great to have your support subscribing. So thanks for tuning in now and subscribing, John. M3 Hub seems to not be well developed. Okay, Robert. Well, it's interesting to hear your findings on that too. We'll see. I'm sure Aqara will get it stabilized. I just like going back to my comfortable M2 world and using my M2 Hub. And my M2 Hub is plenty powerful for everything I need it to do right now. I think some of the ideas of sort of a failover hub and things with Aqara are interesting with the M3. The one thing to keep in mind if you are rolling back from an M3 hub is the M3 hub sort of gets your Aqara home into a state where it could be multiple hubs all sort of being in a parent-child relationship, where you have certain hubs that can work and then talk to a parent hub, and the M3 hub being the parent hub. And you'll need to remove, it's not like you can just, it depends. You could potentially end up, depending on how it's set up, end up in a world where you move some accessory from the M3 hub down to, let's say, an M2 hub or a G4 Pro camera that you have, or something that has or G2H Pro camera that's a hub. Then it's not really doing anything to change your system because it's all still going back through the M3. If you want to downgrade from an M3, you really have to remove the M3 from your home and then just use a different hub from Aqara. But shouldn't, hopefully run into that too much. I think if you just, I don't know, I would say don't buy the M3 at this point, but I know Aqara is working very hard on that product. I'm sure they'll have software updates out soon enough to probably improve it, but I just can't stand behind it right now, based on my experience only. All right. I doubt we'll see cameras until Matter 2.0 at this rate. Yeah, I didn't remember hearing about Matter 1.4 including cameras, because that would be like headline news. But I'm not saying I didn't miss it, so that's why I was a little curious. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see with Matter. Right now we have 1.3 coming in. Like, how fast are these updates really going to roll out to all these different smart home systems? I mean, especially even ones like, let's say, a Home Assistant or something where there's more enthusiasm and dedication just to smart home tech. But even at these bigger tech companies, like, how fast are they going to adopt these things? And also from the Apple Home side of things, like, how fast are we going to get new features? I'm concerned a little bit that we're going to really lose out as Apple Home users in getting new features to the platform, because the Apple Home development team is going to be really focused on Matter standard implementation and the Matter reliability and testing. And that's great in one sense because it makes our smart homes reliable and up to speed with the latest from Matter. But at the same time, I'm sure, myself, Shane, plenty of other creators here, I'm sure Edgar, a lot of folks who use Apple Home a lot could give you a quick list of all kinds of things we'd love to see improved or iterated on. I've made wish lists in the past years ago on my channel about Apple Home, and a lot of those same requests have not been addressed. So now, of course, with Apple Home, there is the APIs with HomeKit, so developers can make their own apps and UI to give you some more power, more functions that you might not have in the Apple Home app. Of course, controller for HomeKit is one of the big ones in that space, but even like Eve's app, which is free with their, you can just download and don't have to own any Eve products. But we have been talking a while, and we haven't gotten to the Nanoleaf accessories that were announced today. Big news from Nanoleaf. So let's jump into that. So we got the blocks. Now, I actually have these in my home. They sent them to me, and they arrived. Well, I guess I shouldn't get into the details, but I've really haven't spent a lot of time with them yet. I set them up and then got the software working. It's a really cool product, and I have a review coming, hopefully in the coming days. We'll see when I'm able to actually get the review done. But I know some of you guys who tune in the live stream, you're sort of on the bleeding edge of smart home tech, you're advanced users. And well, I appreciate if you tune into my review because I'll probably have more details to say about using these products, like the Nanoleaf blocks, to kind of give you a little bit of my working conclusion up front for these blocks. They're a very cool product. I think that the blocks, it's a little bit of recency bias maybe, but like I think it's Nanoleaf's coolest looking product when it's turned on. And because it has this surface area, these bigger lights, it's able to be brighter in your room than other Nanoleaf shapes. And I think it would also look really cool if you got the Nanoleaf skylights. I didn't really have a place to test out the Nanoleaf skylights, so I did not get those. But I think if you had a room where you had Nanoleaf skylights and these on the wall, it could look really cool. That said, though, I think that the Nanoleaf lines are still the product that looks the best from Nanoleaf on your wall, these like sort of wall art category products. I think the lines look the best when they're off. So these look the coolest. The blocks look the coolest when they're on, but the lines look the coolest when they're off. Now, the lines still look cool when they're on as well, but I think it's something to consider is, are you trying to put these in a space where maybe it's a gaming room where you have all kinds of, automation. When you open the door, you have your gaming machine set up and you have like lights in the wall, and you're usually almost always going there at night, and just immediately the lights turn on. And so most of the times when you're in the room, the lights are on. Or even in, let's say, a kid's room where you might be using them a lot at times when you're in there, and maybe they look fine in sort of a kid's room on the wall. Like I put them in my kid's playroom where I think they fit in well. But I think if you're trying to put something more in, let's say, a main place in your home, maybe like a living room, a foyer, and you want something that's more wall, everybody has their own tastes and preferences. I just think that these giant white squares that are matte finish with a little bit of a sheen to them, I just don't think they look as good on the wall as something like lines. So something to consider is maybe if you're thinking about which Nanoleaf shapes or products you might want to get. Those are sort of my general upfront conclusion, or at least working conclusion so far with these products. But I think it's a really cool evolution from Nanoleaf, and some neat ways you can use it with these little grid things where you can hook on. They have a keyboard and gaming controller here. And then I also like this concept of the shelf where you can screw that into the wall. Another thing that's really cool that they sent me were these blocks that have dimensions. So then you can they sort of are 3D and pop out from the wall. And so you can have those mixed in with the flat squares, and it can kind of add some nice dimension to a particular part of your wall you want to check out. So that is the Nanoleaf blocks. Now, the big news I thought of the day, this was news to me. I had heard rumors over the years that Nanoleaf was working on something like this, and I think various rumors of this had surfaced on Reddit and some other places. But the Sense Plus wireless smart switch. So this is a new light switch from Nanoleaf that uses, what was there? Let me pull up my, whoops. Do not want to run that. Let me pull up my notes from the event. They call it the Lightwave technology is their new proprietary technology for this that allows it to connect to Thread and Wi-Fi and a handful of other wireless devices. And I think the Lightwave is also proprietary to their Nanoleaf lights. But you can also use this with Matter as a Matter control for lights. And I have a big affinity these days for buttons and be talking more about that. I think they're a really great way to control your smart home because a lot of people can understand pressing a button on the wall. And then it can do more than just turning the lights on and off. It can set lights to all kinds of different values. You can do all kinds of automations with a smart home event of someone hit the button on the wall at this particular time of day with this setup in your smart home. And so having Nanoleaf making another option in that category, I think is really cool because what they said today in the event is that these two buttons, the sort of 1 and 2 dots here on the side, those are buttons that then can be used in your home to control whatever and exposed to Apple Home and Matter from what my understanding is. So, and what they said today. So you got sort of the on and off buttons at the top and bottom, brightness, and then these two buttons on the side. Now, it does seem to be something where maybe they haven't said anything about where these on and off buttons will go. One of the things that used to be a really great control, kind of like this in the Apple Home world, is the Philips Hue dimmer switch, where, let's see. The Philips Hue dimmer switch, old design. Now this one just coming up in, here it is on, this is what it used to look like, the old design. This was really nice because you could put it, and here's the US styling of it where it said on and off. You could put this in Apple Home and and you can still today, I still have this with a couple different places in my home, but you can put each button of these can be a button in Apple Home that just does one particular scene. So the off button would do the off scene, the on button would do the on scene. And a long time ago on my channel, I reviewed that switch. But the new version of that same kind of switch from Philips Hue doesn't look nearly anything like that and is not nearly as intuitive for controlling lights. Now, you can, of course, do the same thing in Apple Home, but like, who's going to know what to do with the Hue button? There's the Hue button and the power button and brightness. It looks kind of more modern, but I'm hoping that this Nanoleaf one is still open to controlling more lights with the on and off buttons and the brightness buttons, because I think this could be a nice successor to the Hue dimmer switches for those of us who like to have that kind of wireless control in your wall. And it's also, kind of a renter-friendly thing here, and also friendly to folks who understandably don't want to open up their walls and replace their light switches for one reason or another. This is something you could just install on the wall near a light switch or on a wall where it makes sense to have a light switch, and then you control things like skylights and stuff like that. So very cool product, and not that expensive at $30 retail, and then hopefully on sale sometimes. So pretty cool announcement from Nanoleaf. They also had announcement of their A19 bulbs. They're going to be making Wi-Fi versions of those. And I asked Jimmy, their CEO, and he happened to pick my question in the live chat about that with is this sort of replacing their Thread light bulbs, because they were one of the early companies to support Thread and integrating that with Apple Home. And Jimmy was mentioning that this is sort of an addition to their product line, so people can have the option to choose Wi-Fi. I'm guessing, I've noticed Nanoleaf has started being sold in more retailers. They've been in Best Buy for a while, but like I see them in Home Depot as well now. And I imagine that, as they hopefully grow as a company and expand to more users, that they are getting people who are more confused about Thread, which is understandable because Thread is a little bit of a learning curve right now. And it's one of those things that is the Thread radios. It's not something you can count on being in someone's home. And you might remember if you're, think back to 20, 30 years ago or something. It used to be you maybe go to someone's house and you don't ask, what's the password for your Wi-Fi? It's, do you have Wi-Fi in this home? And now, of course, well, everybody is Wi-Fi, right? Like, I mean, more or less. So it's more like, what's your Wi-Fi password than something about if you have Wi-Fi. But it's very reasonable to ask, well, do you have Thread in your smart home? And I think that hopefully as we get Thread built into more and more devices over time, that it will be less of a question of do you have Thread? And that gets me to the last piece of news that came recently. That is the whole where did I have it in a tab here? Oh, where is it? Here we go. The Thread 1.4 standard. This is a big deal for Matter. Now, Thread talked about this. It was like right around the time of CES. I think it was one of their things they had like just before CES started. They were talking about this. But now you're going to be able to have better interoperability between different Thread networks in your home. And also they will all help devices getting out to the internet with their connection better than they have been previously. So I think that having this will mean that, let's say, whatever Wi-Fi router you get, if that has Thread, that's going to help your Thread devices get out to the internet. And then a border router is a less essential piece of that. So I'm really excited to see Thread 1.4 come into Matter and into Apple Home and into all these different systems. But it's going to be a years-long process, I think, before we get to the point where Thread is just so ubiquitous that it's just like, yeah, of course you just get the Thread bulb at the hardware store and install it and it works. I think that day will come, but I think we're probably at least 5 years away from all of those different knock-on effects of it just being something that's in all of the different, routers and hardware in your home, which is already growing. I mean, Eero already has Thread in their routers, but then also on top of that, having accessories being sold in stores with Thread and stuff. I think it's getting there, but I totally makes sense why Nanoleaf is going with some Wi-Fi bulbs for the time being. And I hope they work well. So I want to get to some of your questions here. I've been yakking on for a while. Man, a lot of different news. We're already at past the 30-minute mark here. But, oh, yeah, it looks like you've missed a lot of new releases today, Brian. Well, thanks for tuning in. Really quick highlights of just the Aqara released an outdoor camera that supports HomeKit Secure, or announced a HomeKit Secure Video outdoor camera and a water shutoff valve. Neither one are available for pre-order yet, but they're shipping. Hopefully they'll come later this year, if not early next year. And then we have Nanoleaf's announcement today with their new blocks on the wall, as well as a new light controller with their Sense Plus switch. All of those are available for pre-order and shipping in the coming weeks or months. I think the Sense Plus is shipping in late October. So that would be kind of a quick summary of what we've been going over. And then I'm going to answer some of your questions. Yeah, and that's a good point, Brian. The future home building involves removing physical switches and integrating with Thread, Zigbee, sensors as standard. That could be cool, especially with the Thread side. I think with Matter not officially supporting Zigbee, I think it'll be interesting to see how Zigbee does or doesn't survive. Obviously, Philips Hue is a huge player that uses Zigbee a lot, and so does Aqara, and so does others. So it's definitely still here, but I think, I agree. Although I love having physical buttons on my wall or physical switches just to command things, because you can't beat the speed of that sometimes. Would love to hear more tips on Matter versus, speaking of that, currently have duplicates in Apple Home. I'd like to stick to just one. Duplicates of, I'm guessing like Aqara devices, maybe. I would go, well, if the Zigbee's working for you and you already have it set up, then don't worry about moving it over to Matter. Like, for example, that's like my Aqara stuff with the M2 hub works great. So why would I try and move that over to Matter and add it via Matter? We'll see with what I do there, but I think if you're having problems with Zigbee, then you just remove that device or remove that bridge. So I would go into the home settings in your Apple Home app and look at the different bridges and hubs you have there, because what you'll probably see is that whatever hub or bridge is adding those things with Matter, could be the Philips Hue bridge, could be a Aqara bridge or another one. Those might be listed twice because Apple Home sees them as two completely distinct devices, and then all the devices associated with that bridge are added as completely distinct devices, separate, even though physically in the real world, they are the same light bulb, because they're getting to your smart home in Apple Home via a connection that's completely different. Then they're just going to be seen as different devices. So go into the home settings, look under your hubs and bridges, and remove whatever hub makes sense, whether you want to try removing the Matter one or the Zigbee one. I would say probably, if you more or less, I think it's probably better to just go with the Matter side of things, unless the Zigbee's working fine for you, just because Matter's kind of the direction that everything is going. But you're stuck with two good options there either way. But just pick one and delete the other hub in your home, and you should be good. Any experience with Innovelli? No. Looking for smart switches in my new place, preferably with Matter over Thread. Well, I'm still a fan of Lutron Caseta. They do not support Matter, although they are part of the CSA group that is involved with Matter, and they're always very eager to reiterate that they're excited about the standard and supporting it. So who knows if they'll add support to Lutron Caseta lights. But Lutron's also not as available outside of North America, especially I think in Europe and places. I was really impressed with Eve's lights. They have some cool light switches, and they also have ones that work in other countries, that pretty good global support, including ones in the US. But those are a Matter over Thread switch. They do not have a dimmer, but they do have a switch, and that could be a good option to consider. That's Matter over Thread. One cool thing about these Matter over Thread light switches from Eve, and this is true of some of their other Eve Energy products as well, is that they can actually have automations that the Eve app will send to the switch, and the automation will run on the actual switch. So if you wanted to come on at a particular time of day or something, it can do that regardless of whatever else is going on in your smart home. Your internet can go down, obviously your power can't go out because the switch needs electricity, but your smart home could have all kinds of problems because you just updated the latest beta from Apple that you probably shouldn't have upgraded to or something like that. And then the switch automation would still work. So they are cool. I tend to like, with light switches, sticking to one, maybe two brands. So that's why I haven't been as aggressive in adding Eve's light switches around. They sent me one for testing, and I still use it in one of our bedrooms upstairs. It's great. It's also really great. I think the accessibility of these light switches is really cool because it's just a capacitive touchpad like you might have on your MacBook or other Apple devices, where you just touch it and there's like a little bit of a sound that sort of gives you that tactile feedback. But it's very easy for young children or anybody else who might physically struggle with a normal light switch. These, I can't imagine an easier option to hit than just touching these. Of course, the one downside from the accessibility side, I guess, is that you kind of need to use a human hand to do it, or something that works with a capacitive touch surface. You couldn't, flick it with some kind of a physical device that could reach the light switch. So there's that side of it that's maybe a downside, but they're cool light switches. They're well made, and just something to consider if you're into matter over thread and looking for something other than Lutron. So going back to questions. Oh, yeah, we already talked about that. I'm sorry. I'm like way back in the chat. I'm sorry, John. Need to scroll down here. Yeah, I think Brian was talking about Aqara here. I think they're in-app voice control with Aqara. We'll see how that actual voice assistant works out. I'm a little skeptical on it too. I think it's an interesting thing that Aqara has been doing recently with the M3 hub, with that voice assistant, and they have their own potential subscription options for camera services. You can add to their cameras to get their recordings from their cameras in the cloud if you want that. Aqara, as they're aggressively growing and adding more products, they're also trying to become more of a hub for your smart home than other systems. And I think it's something that I wrote about months ago in my newsletter, but it's just this idea that with Matter, I think we as smart home owners have more, or users have more of a more flexibility in like what systems we use to control our home. Could be Home Assistant, could be Aqara, could be Apple Home, could be that you have everything set up in Home Assistant and then you use Home Assistant to add it to Apple Home, or you could set everything up in Aqara and do the same thing. And so I think Aqara is trying to compete in the new world of Matter, where it could just be you just buy the cheapest Matter device, or maybe not the cheapest, but like you're just buying a physical piece of hardware that basically has firmware on it and just talks to whatever smart home platform you have because of Matter. And I think Aqara is trying to sort of appropriately respond in a business sense to that by trying to make their platform more attractive to be your home for everything smart home. And we'll see how that works out for them. I think from their perspective, their strategy of trying to be a good business and trying to grow, I think it makes perfect sense. So we'll see. But personally for me, I tend to keep most of my stuff in Apple Home, so I'm not as interested in using that myself. But we'll see how that evolves. I think this voice assistant is right in line with those kinds of ideas. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We're past 45 minutes here. And thanks for tuning in to this new time late at night. I missed you guys last week. Didn't have a live stream, but this time, well, it does compete with Thursday night football in the fall. It is a better time for me, and hopefully a better time for some of you guys tuning in. And we should hopefully, let me just double check my calendar. We should be able to be right back here next week, same time, same place. So looking forward to it, and hopefully making this more of a weekly-ish habit. So thanks for tuning in. Have a great rest of your night, and hope to see you in the next video. Bye.